So I'm looking forward to it, but let's kick it off with Lawrence, the race and ethnicity data collection, and then I'll let you guys just roll right in from that into the formula grants.
Okay, can everyone hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thanks, Lawrence.
Okay. So hello, everyone, and thank you. So real briefly, I'm not sure if everyone is aware, but the Federal Office for Management and Budget has put forward a proposal to change the way race and ethnicity data is currently collected. This change would change the two-question system that is currently used to identify a person's race and ethnicity, and it could impact how juvenile justice delinquency prevention acts data collection is collected. So the changes are based on feedback from listening sessions I guess they've had, and the proposal would condense the two questions, race and ethnicity, into one. Because of reported confusion that the two-question system currently creates. So it would enable self-reported data to include both a minimum and a detailed level response that reflects an individual's cultural heritage with greater nuance to that. So so that's what they're proposing to do. I'll put something in the chat because they do have a town meeting set up for 3 different times next week and the week after to try to get more input or just a better understanding of what they're trying to achieve. And there's also a public option to respond to the changes and how you may or may not feel about it concerning the work that you may be involved in concerning that change. So I don't know if everyone.
So Lawrence, have we or Anya, have we in our work with how we collect information, do we have, will this be, how will we fold this into what we've been doing, Lawrence? Do you know?
I think it depends on what they are requiring from a federal standpoint. We'll just kind of, because we mirror a lot of what they want in terms of shaping and creating what we have to fit their needs because of some of the resources that we heavily depend upon on them. So based on how they want us to identify and how they want us to collect, it may change some of the ways that we report data or some of the things that we're looking for in that reporting. So I'm sure that it would have some effect on our GJS process and how we identify who comes through the doors through our juvenile justice systems.
So Lawrence, I was just trying to figure out, did you folks at YDD send this out, or I'm just trying to remember, there's a link in our agenda. I'm just wondering, obviously that went to us folks on this committee, but did you send this out to any other folks? Because I feel like I've seen it somewhere else.
I haven't. I wanted to bring this to the committee first before we broadcasted anything else. I lean heavily on you guys' advice and guidance. So wanted just to have this conversation, let everyone know that this is happening. There will be some town hall meetings. I can send that email out to you also with those dates. And then there's a public comment section also that we can comment on as well. And I believe we have up until April 12th or April 14th to do that. So I'll send this information out to all of you, but I had not sent it out to anyone else because I wanted, like I said, to discuss it with you first.
Right. So have you, so I haven't looked at it. I just remember seeing, I clicked on the link and I was like, oh, I got to make sure I read that later. But is it your opinion that this is a good change? I mean, I heard you say at the beginning that it's based on the listening sessions and the feedback. And I know there's been a lot of talk about this for several years. So what are your thoughts about it?
Well, my thoughts personally, I'm still kind of digesting everything around it. So I don't have a valid opinion just to stand on just yet because I'm still dissecting the information that's there. I think it's good to be able to have people self-identify to get into the nuances of it. But I'm also concerned about what that looks like and the effects of that we may not be aware of moving forward. Will something get eliminated because of that? Because when we change, sometimes we add to, but we always seem to take away also. So will that be a way to eliminate something that needs to be reported, or will that diminish numbers in a certain area because they don't identify as that, but they may have in the past and so forth like that. So I'm still looking at it closely just to see the consequences of that, unintended consequences of that. But to have the ability for someone to self-identify as to who they are and to get into the nuances if they choose to do so, I think that's a wonderful tool to have as far as data collection.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. And that's pretty much all I have. So I'm sorry, Mr. Cole, you have something?
All right, Lawrence, just call me Sam. Okay, so I didn't have a chance to read it. So, and then I'm just curious because we also had a change in our disproportionality rates, and then what it was the threshold for the rate for us, the weighted risk ratio decreased. Like for instance, in the past, I'm just going to use round numbers. So let's say like 5 school districts were found to be disproportionately disciplining kids or whatever. But because the weighted risk ratio was lowered from, let's say, like from 7 times to like 4 times, it doubled to like 10 school districts. I'm just using round numbers,
Right.
is that like, so then now more school districts are being found to be not in compliance with the rates, so is that what they're asking, or are they like, I don't know what they're what OJDP is asking for? Like what is it?
Well, what they're really asking for is a more nuanced identification, self-identification of who a person believes they are, how they identify, culturally as well as ethnically. And they're trying to get away from race and ethnicity, and they're trying to combine the two. Because, and I'll give you an example. If I'm from Haiti, I don't consider myself a Black male. I consider myself a Haitian. But everyone else looks at an African-American male and an Haitian male, and they'll see 2 Black males. So it allows someone to self-identify with a greater nuance to who they identify as. I hope that was kind of a broad example, but I hope that kind of gives the picture of what they're trying to reach for as far as self-identification, what a person really believes in. It's not just race and ethnicity. It's kind of the two, so they're trying to combine the two. So I could say I'm an African-American male, and he can say he's a Haitian male. But when you do that, sometimes, like I said, there's some unintended consequences to that. So you kind of eliminate, Black race altogether a lot of times. So you lose some of that data.
Okay, thank you. How about gender? Because I've had that question, like when they ask for gender, like male, female, like will it be they also can self-identify? Like, do they have to say gender that they were born with or they identify with?
And with this one, I don't think they're going into gender. They're just mainly focused on race and ethnicity. I think
Okay.
at some point they will branch off into that area as well. But this is just where they're starting. This is the starting point for that. And I think once people get more comfortable with self-identifying as to who they are, then they'll get more comfortable with self-identifying as what they choose to be as well.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Lawrence. And then for education, yeah, you hit it on the head, Lawrence. Like for instance, every kid in Oregon is assigned a SSID, like school identifiable number. Let's just say 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if they identify themselves as Asian, but then later on they come into a facility and they identify as Pacific Islander, then our schools have to go through a process to change not just that school's record, but to update the overall ID, identification for that. Because when another school punches in that ID number, they'll show Asian instead of, whatever they want, so that's why. So, yeah, so you're saying if they were to change, suppose JGIS and what this is not jiving, so then would JGIS have to be updated too, the records?
I'm not sure exactly how that would work with JGIS, but I'm sure that there would be some sort of adjustment made, for lack of a better word, an asterisk as of 2023 moving forward, because that's a lot of information, a lot of data from past that would have to be changed. So I don't know if all states have the capacity to do such a heavy load, to carry such a heavy workload to change all of that. So I'm sure some adjustments would be made because the data is different. The information that we're putting in is different. But to change everything, I don't know how far back they would go, or moving forward, where would they start with that? That would be up to that would be a conversation for those states that's collecting that data and how they would want to approach that.
So I actually am going to let Christina and call on Christina in just a second to talk a little bit about JDIS modernization. But before we get to that, Anya, did you have a question or comment?
Well, I just had a couple of comments. So just to be clear, this proposed changes would affect every single federal agency. It will affect Department of Justice, Department of Education, Department of Health and Human Services, just every single federal entity, because this is the data collection is changing for everything that is federally based, which means that if the federal agencies change the way they collect race and ethnicity information and put those identifiers into their databases, consequently, it will affect every state agency that receives funds and so forth. Now, what they're asking for is input of different kinds. Does it make sense? Is that the way looking at ethnic information and racial information doesn't make sense? Because they're making some changes. So there's a longer version now. If you identify as white, there are some options like what kind of white, what ethnicity you identify with. If you're Hispanic or Latino, again, Puerto Rican, Cuban, Colombian, and so forth. Now they're adding another category on besides white that was never before. That will be Middle Eastern and North African. So that's a new category of race and ethnicity that they introduced. So there are some changes. On a pragmatic level, what it will do for us here in Oregon, we get the information that Lawrence and I submit to the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention on our racial and ethnic disparities is derived from JGIS, from the Juvenile Justice Information System. So if JGIS do not have those categories, or have them in a different way, then we don't have the information potentially that will be asked of us to provide. So then it will be a question whether JGIS will want to change. And Christina, it may sound familiar because we had this conversation a little bit at the last juvenile directors meeting. Because when we were talking about the JGIS modernization thing. So it's still up in the air. That's why they're asking for feedback. And I believe Lawrence was going to put, unless he already put it, some invitations to town halls that at this point, that will be the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention putting together, soliciting feedback from the field how it would affect us. So our response might be like, okay, that will change how data are collected in Oregon for those particular things. And it might take us quite a bit of time to adjust to what you are now asking. So it does create a change. Whether it's a change for the better or is it more confusing change, I don't know at that point. I really, don't have a lot of understanding what it will look like in real life. But if you have time to participate and provide feedback, please do. Because again, the potential impact is pretty significant. Thank you.
So yeah, it's significant, it's great, and it's a challenge. Christina, any thoughts about
A lot of thoughts.
I know. I'm gonna have to spend some time with this because it is kind of a big piece, but just thoughts. What?
Yeah, so one clarifying question, is this, like I said, I haven't read it, I'm sorry. Is this proposing it go into effect, obviously at some point in the future, but like, is there an opportunity to try to get our act together in Oregon before this new these new categories go and data sets go into an effect? Do you know when it's supposed to? This is a rulemaking thing, right? They're proposing.
Right.
Yeah. So when are they proposing it go into effect? Do you, Anya or Lawrence, do you know that?
I don't know. I missed that, but generally speaking, every change that the federal agencies are trying to implement take a bit of time. I'll just leave it at that.
That's a really nice way to put
it. Understatement of the week goes to Anya Zucchino. Okay, so some thoughts. My mind is racing. I'm starting an email over here to Bridget. So I think that right out of the gate, I appreciate the opportunity to go to these town halls to listen and hear what the discussion is. If I'm not able to do it, I'm going to have somebody on my team who deals with the data. Her name's Bridget. Try to make sure that she can go to it. But I'm thinking I should send this to several people to get it on the radar immediately. So and you know this, Anya, we have Mark Greenwald, who is the co-chair of the JGIS Data and Evaluation Committee, where we have been for years very in having in-depth conversations, because there's been such a high level of dissatisfaction with our current JGIS system limitations, as Anya just alluded to. Such a high level of dissatisfaction about how it really doesn't capture, it's not inclusive, and it's very limiting. And so that group has been trying to figure out what are some workarounds, and also, as Anya and Molly have mentioned, as we're moving forward with JGIS modernization, we've been working on this I've been involved in this for 7 years. It's not my fault, everyone. Just for the record, it's not my fault. I'm not the person who's delaying it. It's not any one person. It's just been funding and all kinds of, challenges along the way. But the good news is, allegedly, I'm knocking on wood over here. Allegedly, we are going to have the JGIS modernization project finished. It's going to be modernized, and it's going to go live by June of 2025. So a little bit more than 2 years. So the timing of, hearing about this, having an opportunity to have input, and then also having the information of whatever the decision is, right? Because rulemaking doesn't go on forever. They're gonna let us know, so that we can try to see what we can build into the modernization project is pretty critical. So what I'm thinking, Molly, is this email is not going to just go to Bridget. I'm going to send it to Mark Greenwald. I'm going to send it to Doug Thomas. I'm probably going to send it to Stephen Hoffert, and get this on their radar, so that the people, we don't have siloing of, the people doing JGIS modernization don't really even realize that this rule's being proposed that could impact us and how we are moving forward in Oregon. So those are my thoughts. Is that what you're looking for, Molly, or were you looking for world peace or some other small task? Because this has kind of felt like this thing we've been talking about for years and years and years in Oregon. It has felt like a really big boulder that we've been trying to move, but because of the lack of infrastructure, technology, we haven't been able to do that. So we're heading in that direction. So is there anything else you were thinking, Molly, you wanted me to comment on?
No, that's really, I think that was really spot on. And so for Lawrence, and Anya knows this, but Christina's one of the co-chairs of the steering committee for JJS, as well as a co-chair for the JJS modernization subcommittee. And so that's the beautiful part of this part of our SAG, our JJ committee, is we have the right people at the table to make the connections. And I think timing wise, Christina, I think spot on that we're working on this right now in Oregon, and getting it to the key people I thought you were going to name to provide input back, as well as be kind of thoughtful as we're making our changes here.
Yeah, and I think even if people, I think going to the town halls, even if you don't have comments to make, just to listen to what other people are asking or questioning, about it, I think is helpful too. So
yeah. I think Doug Thomas will be one to tune definitely in on that. So thank you, Lawrence. This is kind of big.
Kinda. Starting out with a bang.
I know. Your first meeting where you present. Wow.
It's great though. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anything else for this particular piece as we get ready to roll into the next agenda item, which is the federal grants?
Well, no, nothing else for this piece. And again, I like Christina said, I think this is great timing. It helps us to navigate where we want to go as a state with some of the modernization that we're doing with our data collection as well. So I think this is good timing, and just let me know what I can do to help facilitate any area that is in need. Thank you.
Well, when I see the town hall information, Lawrence, I will shoot it to these people that I just named off that are really involved in the data and evaluation and the modernization project. So get it on the radar.
Okay, excellent.
And then once the rule comes out from the federal, after they've done all the town hall and they've come out with their rule, I think it would be great to just put a pin in the back of our heads to make sure that we ask you to come present back at our subcommittee, but also at some other committees, such as OJDDA, and maybe even our JJS committee, steering committee, just to be able, because we have a section on our JJS steering committee that we really talk about racial and ethnic disparities in regional racial and ethnic data collection. I think that would be, again, once it's settled, if Christina and I remember to put it in our heads, to have you kind of come share the results with us.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. And Anya, just for clarification, did you say this will impact every federal agency?
Correct. So
Yeah.
please feel free to share with your colleagues from different fields. Sam, I don't know who at OD would be the right person to receive this, but please make a selection. Who to send it to.
Election. And then, I hate to say this.
Well, everybody. I'm sorry.
No,
Every
no.
time people ask about somebody in Department of Education, I refer them to you, and you're always
Right.
in the middle who the right person is.
Yeah. And I'm just going to be honest, if it's going to affect every single federal agency, it could be where we're just going to be part of the clog. Like, there's the IRS, there's FBI, there's the military,
Yeah.
if it was just going to be OJDP, they'd really listen to us. But then if it's every single federal agency, State Department for the passports, think about it, like,
See, that's this thing, and I'm thinking like the more they hear, the more voices are being heard, the better. But I'm with Christina. At this point, I don't know what to think, honestly, and how to react. All I know is a change is coming, but I'm not in a position for myself to just, to know or make a informed decision. Is it a good change or bad change? Is how we're going to deal with it? All I know, it's going to be a change. Now we need to figure out whether this change on one hand makes sense, you know,
Well, and what are the collateral?
and to know what we need to do to accommodate to the change.
And like Lawrence said, what do we need to make sure we have in place so we don't lose data in the past?
Right.
And make that bridge to make it meaningful data. But I also really applaud really being able to identify who you are and words.
Right.
So that's awesome. But how does it actually get implemented? Will be some more conversation, I'm sure.
Right.
Okay. Formula grants RFA. Anya, do you want to take it and kick it off?
I was just gonna say a couple of words on that. It's mostly Lawrence who will be
Okay.
the party working on the RFA and then be the grant administrator for the funds. But I just want to remind you that at the last meeting, we had a conversation whether to make these grants 1 or 2 years. And unless I'm mistaken, or unless you've changed your mind or something, any other unless, we've decided that the possibility was to award 2-year grants to eligible and successful applicants. Is that correct? Because we need to make that sort of recommendation statement at the YDC meeting on Thursday.
So let me hold a space for that. And I think we can do it by consensus rather than vote unless there's the discussion last time was to make them and move to 2-year. Is there any opposition to that? Okay, hearing none, and I don't see any in the chat. Anya, we can move forward with that at the council meeting that the committee recommends 2-year for the Title II formula grants.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Can
And
I
then-
just ask, I'm not opposed to that at all. I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. Figured I would do it here instead of in the big meeting, or maybe both, but you know, maybe you can answer it. If an entity wants to apply, because typically they've really only been 1 year at a time, right? If there is an organization that wants to apply and wants to just spend it all in 1 year, they would be allowed to do that, wouldn't they?
No.
No, they wouldn't.
I'll
Okay.
tell you why. Because see, if you look at the agenda, it says fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22 formula
Yeah.
grants.
Yeah.
Because we're using 2 different grant awards from the federal office. It just circumstances are such that we have both awards in at the same time because of the whole
That's right. Yeah.
fiscal year 21, because
Yeah.
normally we are not able to offer federal grants for 2 years.
That's
because
right.
we
I'm
never
sorry.
know what kind of money we will get for the following year, right? So
Right.
it's a unique opportunity.
Yes, for 2
And
years.
since we
Okay.
have it, and it's the same program area, and Lawrence, correct me if I don't remember it well. So we have alternatives to detention grant stream. We have a community-based services grant program. And the third one is delinquency prevention, right? So we have an opportunity to say, well, this is your first year will be funded out of fiscal year 21. And if the grantee performance is, well, basically good enough for the second year, the funding is available to continue.
Right. Yeah, great. Thank you. Sorry. Now it's all coming back to me what you said at our OJDDA meeting. I really was listening.
Oh, good. Of course you are. So, and now Lawrence is working on the technical bit of things, working on the RFA and utilizing our SM apply system. Lawrence, are you there?
Yes, I am. So like Anya said, we're going to launch the RFAs under a new program. It's that I don't believe we've used in the past. It's SM Apply. So this way we can have a collection point of reporting. The RFA will go out through here. It's just a more streamlined and efficient way to manage the grant. There's 3 grants, and like Anya said, we're looking at, since we have funds for 2 years, we're looking at, extending the grantees approval for a grant for a 2nd year as well. So I'm working with a grant manager here at YDD. Tomorrow we have a meeting actually, and we're going to really try to pin down everything that we need to get done so we can get these out as soon as possible, so we don't run into too many procurement issues moving forward. So again, we're using SM Apply. We have pretty much everything kind of set up. We're just trying to kind of pin down some of the nuances of this grant, because it's a newer process. We're using a new approach, but it should be a more streamlined and more efficient way of distributing the grants, managing the reporting, the quarterly reporting, and duplicating the process for another year as well.
Okay, any questions for the group? All right, we'll keep it on the agenda for next month and see how it's going, see where we're at in the process as we're moving forward with this. Lindsay, are you ready to update us about OJJDP compliance monitoring?
Yeah, I've got some updates. So OJJDP has just recently come out with a new cohort training for the newest compliance monitors. So their first of 5 sessions was the week before last. And it was basically, here introduction of who's who. They have a new online toolkit available for us, which is really helpful and nice. Definitions, everything is in there for us. Forms we can use. There is the second series of the session is this Thursday. So I will not be at the YDC council meeting this Thursday because that will interfere with that. But the second session is this Thursday, and it's going to be about the DSO, which is the deinstitutionalization of status offenders requirements. So we'll learn about that. Let's see. So the requirement I'm most interested in is the new requirement of the 11B, which the courts are not supposed to put any juvenile in an adult jail or lockup unless it's been found in the interest of the justice to do so. It's a real new requirement, and unfortunately it's the very last session, so it'll be April 20th. Anxiously awaiting it, but that's kind of where I'm stuck right now. I won't have any of my courts reporting for the FY22 period when I get ready to report to OJJDP. I hear it's supposed to be opening sometime this month, but Oregon will still be at the 85%, which is where we will get all of our Title II funding. So Anya and I had met with Nella Hogberg, who is with the juveniles in the Oregon Judicial Department area. We met with her. I got all of the trial court administrators' names and information, which was very helpful. And I did reach out to each and every one of them, and I introduced myself to them. And I was trying to do like a survey just to make sure my information and records were up to date on which courts I have that are secure and which are not. The responses I got back weren't very helpful. A lot of people were like, we don't have holding cells. We don't have anything to do with the court stuff. You need to talk to the sheriffs. You need to talk to the juvenile directors. And so I've been in communication with the Center for Coordinated Assistance to States, or CCAS. And they sent me some documents that I can kind of tweak for Oregon and use. And I just want to send that out probably to Sheriff's Association, Juvenile Director, everybody who can help me find out which entity is going to report for the courts, like who, when, what, where, like everything. Because when we report next year.
So I actually have a question. I don't know that I know the definition of a secure court.
So anybody who has any secure holding, like a lockable cell. I mean, they probably don't have lockable interview rooms like the facilities I've been going in, But if there's a cell in there that locks, or a chair that's secured to the ground and you can handcuff somebody to it, that would be a secure facility. And that's what I have to have eyes on. And it's kind of confusing too with everybody, because they're like, well, we don't hold juveniles here. And I'm like, okay, well, even if you if you have adults there, I need to get eyes on it, because a juvenile, if they end up in there, then there's violations potentially with sight and sound. So it's just trying to get everybody on the same page. And so I'm working on getting some documents ready to send out to everybody, so that next year we can have all of the course reporting too. But when that 11B session comes up with OJJDP, I'll get a lot more on that too, on what needs to be recorded and reported. Because I reached out, and Oregon's not the only state having issues with the courts. There's a lot of states having a hard time. So hopefully we can all get it. But OJJDP is not using this data against the states for until 2025, I want to say. They're just trying to get a baseline of data.
Okay.
So trying to get all of that together. Site visits are resuming since I'm getting all my data wrapped up for FY22. I will be out in the Gresham, Milwaukee area on March 14th. If anybody wants to join, I'm happy to send you the details and calendar invites. I'll be in a couple police departments, and I think they're all police departments. I have to double check. And let's see, I already told you about the 85%. Oh, I did reach out to ICJ, or the Interstate Compound on Juveniles. I sent them my data that I got from the Oregon Youth Authority regarding the juvenile detention centers, just to see if all of the juveniles from out of state are not violations. But she's really busy, so I'm still waiting for her to go through that and let me know. So when I do report, hopefully none of them are violations. And then I know it's on the agenda, but I am booked and preparing to go to the Coalition Juvenile Justice Conference in May. So yeah, I think I've covered everything. I wrote a lot of notes on my paper here.
Any questions for Lindsay?
Well, I just, if I may, thank you, Lindsay, for sharing on that. So Molly, the reason why Lindsay would be really interested in participating in the board meeting for the association on Wednesday next week is to share with you all what she just shared with you now. The confusion around court holding cells and who has this information and how to approach, and which county it would be juvenile department and which it would be somebody else. So kind of that you're not surprised by this messaging and asking for help. Figure us out how to gather the information that's needed without confusing people unnecessary.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think there'll be lots of interesting questions, and I think this is exactly getting the OJDDA. Luckily at our board meeting, there's lots of participants, because we do it virtually, from all over the state, that will be able to help you out. I'm sure if you send it to my court, my guess is they just went, I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of people, if I got responses, it was very confused, and I was like, well, at least they know who I am now because I introduced myself. So yeah.
No, I think that's great. And I also really appreciate when you're going into an area, if you just let the juvenile director know you're headed into the area, that sometimes they can help. If there are any bumps or anything, by all means, lean on us to be able to walk through some of those conversations, because lots of times the default is, I don't know, just ask the juvenile director.
Gotcha. Okay, sounds good. Thank you. I did reach out to Donald E. Long Friday, but I haven't heard back from them yet, because I was hoping to visit them the week I'm out there as well, but I will try again this week. I'm going to try a different contact I have. I found out, what's her name? Dina, that she retired. So
Yeah, so it's Kyla Armstrong Romero, and if you don't have the contact and Ani doesn't have it, reach out and I will make sure I make you the connection between the two.
okay, yeah, I got Kyla and someone else, but I tried only Kyla first and not the second one. I have to double check who it is. Talked to so many people the last couple weeks.
Well, and I think, Lindsay, it's Molly, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's really important for Lindsay to be recognized by the juvenile director, so that if she emails Kyla next time, that she knows who she's receiving a message from.
I would be glad to make that introduction as sitting as a current president of OJDDA. I could be, by all means, make that introduction.
Appreciate, thank you.
Christina, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Hey, it's only been 3 years, folks. I also think it might be helpful when you reach out to Kyla. Ken Jaron is the custody services manager for Donald D. Long. He is one of Kyla's senior managers. So in terms of going through and checking things out, he would most likely be the person you'd be directly working with. So it might be helpful to email the two of them at the same time. If you go to the OJDDA website, we have the detention managers listed there. Well, you know that. I'm sorry, Lindsay. Of course you know that. He should be on there too.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just pulling up I'm trying to pull up what I got the other day from, I think it was an automated message saying that Dina had left, but I cannot find my email right now. If I find it, I will just put it in the chat what the contact was that I received. But yeah, I'll check it out today too. Thank you so much.
Lindsay, you can also contact Kelly Frazier.
Kelly Frazier. Let me read that down. Okay, I got Ken Jaron and Kelly Frazier.
Who's
All right.
Kelly Frazier?
Is it Kelly Frazier? Kyla's admin person?
No, it's Kelly Fiesler.
Oh, Fiesler, sorry,
Yeah.
Fiesler, yes.
I
Yes.
know that because I originally hired her.
Okay, right. Yes, Kelly Fiesler, yeah.
Like,
And she's
oh my
very-
gosh, who's Kelly Frazier?
Yeah, she's very responsive. Kelly's
Yes, she
terrific.
is.
Okay, thank you. I wrote those
Lots
names
more
down.
information, Lindsay.
Yes, thank you so much. Very helpful. I will bother them.
So on a side note, as we close, anybody else, Keith, Logan, Rafi, any questions? Great. As we close out, I will be interested just in my own personal piece, hearing how the conversation goes with ICJ, because that is still my one funny holdout on the deinstitutionalist status offenders, which I completely 100% believe in. And yet we can put out of state runaways in detention. And that has always just been this little funny, weird glitch for me. And so, but ICJ reminds me all of the time that they are a big lobby. So, okay. Thanks, Logan. I'm super appreciative that you're here and listening on the wall. I just always like to leave space for anybody to weigh in.
I appreciate it.
Okay. I'm going to close that particular piece and then open a conversation about the probation reform. And Anya, do you want to kick this off, or do you want me to kick it off?
Either way.
Okay, so I'm actually going to kick it off. I'm going to take Pierre's prerogative and ask Brian and Anya to weigh in with me as we kind of go through this. And the reason I want to kick this off is this is something that probably is really fresh and exciting to me, as something that could be an opportunity for us to weigh in on. And so in your handouts, there was the toolkit for state advisory groups to really talk about probation reform. And so I've been a part, and they're looking for 4 to 6 states to be project sites. And it's really around our SAG engaging with the Annie Casey Foundation and with some other states on how we as a SAG can work with our juvenile justice professionals. So in the state of Oregon, that would be juvenile departments and OYA, to really look about probation reform and are using some of our dollars to kind of focus in on probation reform. And in the toolkit, there's some facts about probation. I think that we all have known over the years, and Brian, I know you've been a part of, I think Christina hired you as well in Multnomah County, if I'm not mistaken, to work on the JDAI and reducing our reliance on detention and increasing detention alternatives. But while the outcome was pretty powerful on the reduction of detention, the journey was just as powerful. And so using or thinking or recommending to the YDC for Oregon to put forth as one of the states interested in doing probation reform. And interestingly enough, Washington to our direct north and Idaho to our east have both been states that have been working on this through the Casey Foundation. And Pierce County, Washington has been kind of the leader for this in Washington. And then in Idaho, they moved and focused really on the deinstitutionalization of status offenders through all of their assessment centers all across the state of Idaho. And I've been lucky enough to work with both leaders in both of those states that have been key leaders in both of those states. And so that's what we're kind of proposing today. Brian and Anya, I'm going to kick it off to you guys now.
Anya, I'd kick it over to you. I'm
Okay.
not sure what to add.
So I will just talk about the pragmatic moment here. So if in general we're as a state and be as a state advisory group interested in participating in this effort, then there's an opportunity to apply for an on-site kickoff sort of informational meeting at any EKC headquarters in Baltimore on June 21st. If after this meeting we're in agreement that this is something that we would like to do as a state and take advantage of this opportunity, and we need to send in an application to any EKC by March 17th. It's a very, very simple application. I looked at it. We don't need to write an essay. We don't need to write the history of Oregon from the day it was born or the history of the juvenile justice. It's just very basic, like what the level of interest is. They're asking for several people to commit. So this, I'm just looking at my note, who is there asking to be part of the team, because it has to be a team. Have to have one youth member of the council, one chair of either state advisory group or a committee of the state advisory group that would be leading that work, which would be in our case Molly, and other members of the state advisory group as decided by the group. It's like the self-nominating thing, and also juvenile justice specialist and or racial and ethnic disparities coordinator, which in our case would be Lawrence and I. And any case is covering all expenses. So state doesn't have to invest in travel or any type of accommodation. So it's all taken care of by the foundation. And then the actual event will be held on June 21st in Baltimore.
So did I remember the youth member can travel with us, or they're able to participate virtually? Is that correct, Anya?
Oh, thank you for bringing it up. Everybody, it's not a requirement to be there in person for everybody. They will have some provisions made to participate virtually as well. So it's almost like a hybrid situation.
So Brian, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about what the Casey process tends to be, so that everyone can kind of know what it might experience if we were to participate with Casey. But I also want to bring up that Oregon has like 3 initiatives kind of going along the same line right now that it feels like this would fit nicely with. And that one is through Nella, who Anya mentioned earlier. So OJD is currently taking a look at the role of the courts with the juvenile justice system. And they're doing some training and best practices and working on a bench book. So there's this kind of initiative, and I understand that's the deep end, but still there's this initiative moving forward. There is the juvenile justice kind of group that's in, there's a bill in House Bill 2320 with Council of State Governments. So we would have some, that is also moving forward in the state of Oregon. I don't know where that's going to land at the end of the day with the legislature, but that is also some kind of focus on juvenile justice, which is exciting to kind of talk about. And then the third is really, there's a bill in, again, around legislation around a minimum age and how YDC, or the Youth Juvenile Justice Subcommittee, comes to the table on the younger youth. And so those 3 things together kind of create an interesting fabric for Oregon as we are looking at the current legislative session. And so kind of it fits in with what it feels like what we're working on in Oregon. The other is we have some experience on some of the work in the past on your subcommittee. You have Georgetown fellows, Christina, myself, and Brian, and Anya. All 4 of us, I think, have Georgetown experience, and probably more that I don't know. And then also just working, Multnomah County has been a model site for JDAI, as well as the Central and Eastern Oregon counties have been as well. Not a model site, but they've done the initiative. And one of the things I've really valued out of working in those initiatives is learning how to use data to drive and look at decisions. And they have a tool called Results Counts. So it's really looking at what do we want as a results and working backwards. So Christina or Brian, I know both of you have been really involved in initiatives with the Casey Foundation in the back. Any thoughts?
Yeah, this is Brian. I mean, I having been, and I think those who know Brian Detman, just since I was a little late, apologies. I was on with the representative and, doing some other things. So I missed the beginning of the meeting, but here I am. Yes, was Christina and I had the pleasure of working together when I was, and one of my jobs was managing the JDAI work at Multnomah County and other kind of reform related and community work, which was a total pleasure, and worked very closely with the Casey Casey folks and met folks from various jurisdictions. And I think that when I started a couple of years ago, I was interested in how, as a state, we might engage in some way with the work that Casey's involved in. And in this case, probation reform. I feel like I understand and see the value kind of at a larger conceptual level. I guess I need to, there's some other questions I just have about how, as a state, we could implement, or as a group, a work group, or whatever we want to call the team, how and what we would implement. I think you all know this as well or better than I, that the county representation is really important. So just that's a wondering, like, how we might, from a state level, come up with an idea and implement, right? And I don't know exactly what that looks like, but this is interesting. I think Casey would provide us great tools and great perspective. The other thought, and Christine, I want to hear your thinking too, right, is we have our federal dollars, and Anya can remind what those sort of dollars are organized around: community-based supports, alternatives to detention, and I can't remember the third one. I think those are, I think, two of the three. So alignment in that way would probably be really important and valuable, and or around this point that if the racial and ethnic disparities work, and with Lawrence's participation, how we align this idea of probation reform with addressing and reducing disparities. I don't know, I can imagine some things, but I think that would be important. That alignment, so that there's meaningful implementation, I think is really important. So those are my quick thoughts.
Great, Christina.
Well, those are good thoughts, Mr. Detman. I'm laughing when you said one of the jobs I had. Anybody who knows me is when you're on my team, you never just have one job. I don't just have one job. But anyway, I digress. So I agree with everything Brian just said. Some questions that came to mind for me are this toolkit that you attached. I mean, I think we're true believers. There's, me and Molly and I were talking about it. Brian, I know how you roll. This is really exciting stuff. But here's the but. So this is not being negative. This is the realist in me. This we all know, as Brian just said, we have a bifurcated system in Oregon where we have the state agency that is the very, very deep end, and then the counties all have responsibility for having kids on probation. And if we're keeping it real, I see a lot of tie-in with impacting the racial and ethnic disparities when you look at the deep end, because we are the feeder. Our probation kids at the county level, not always, sometimes we get those kids who go straight to, they've been adjudicated on a really serious crime and they go straight to OYA. In my department, that's really not usually how it works. They're usually involved on probation in with my department. We try everything we can. We hit the end of the road of what we've got available. And typically the prosecutor or the judge feels that the community can't be safe, and they commit kids to the Oregon Youth Authority eventually after we've exhausted everything at the county level. So if we can be more successful and really being research-based and not doing things that we know that don't work at the county level, we can really impact the number of kids that keep going. Well, we can impact, because what they're talking about is we're kind of upside down. We have way more kids that are on probation really than need to be, is my takeaway when I read a lot of this. So we can impact, this could impact kids on the front end of the system, kids in the middle part of the system, and kids on the very deep end of the system, not getting there. So I think that's really exciting. What I worry about is there has to be stakeholder buy-in at the community level. If part of the application, and Anya, I haven't looked at I don't know what the application is, but everything we've ever done with any EKC, both in Multnomah County, and we're doing a little work with them here, it's about how are you, it's one of the core principles of JDAI, right? And really authentic collaboration, involving the community, involving stakeholders. So my concern when I hear, and I'm not poo-pooing, I'm just surfacing it because it's real. When I hear a deadline of March 17th, it makes me wonder, are we going to have time to get the buy-in from juvenile departments? Because I'm assuming they're going to want some people that are willing to roll up their sleeves and be involved in this. I don't think it's impossible. Come on, nothing's impossible, but there's going to have to be commitment. So in some counties, they might have a district attorney who does not support JDAI because they are a member of a longstanding club that hates the NEAKC Foundation in the prosecution ranks. By the way, that's not the situation in Clackamas anymore. we actually have a technical assistance grant that my new DA wrote a letter of support, and he told so that we could get it from the NE Casey Foundation. So I don't know how that works around the rest of the state. So I'm just identifying like some of the preliminary barriers. So I don't know if this is one of those things where it isn't going to be enough for the state agency OYA to say, yay, we want to do this, when we are serving 95% of the kids at the county level. So I don't know if it's, they already know they have Multnomah. Multnomah is doing an initiative on with their probation. And they probably are assuming, I would assume, Molly, oh, Kojak would likely be supportive because of their relationship with us in the past. But I don't know what the parameters are. Does every county juvenile department have to raise their hand and say they'll do this? Or is it enough that we have kind of a sampling of counties and not all? Because I don't think we can get all 36 by March 17th. And I doubt the NE Casey Foundation is demanding that. But those are the things that come to mind for me.
Yeah, so I actually think the beautiful part about this is we don't have to tackle the whole thing. This isn't the elephant that we even have to eat one bite at a time. What it really is asking for is for the SAG to consider this as they look at their title dollars. And so it doesn't have to be the whole pie. We really can take a look at it from a perspective of the SAG. So it's less about forcing and more about influencing and setting the right table to have those conversations and not have. So that's what I think what made it exciting is that it has the capacity to inform and not necessarily dictate, but it also has the capacity. I mean, we in Oregon have a little bit of a really good start because of things like Multnomah County and Kojak and our relationship with Georgetown and YDC being a part of that. So I think it really leans on what is already happening to just move that along, and then maybe looking at our title dollars to help encourage that rather than dictate it. So that's the power. That's the part that I think is fun. Does that make sense, Christina?
Yeah, I'm just trying. So they're not trying to, I'm trying to wrap my head around it. They're not trying to do work with the SAGs to try to have like a demonstration project in states, or is it?
But they're not, it is, but it's not, it's putting together a 3-year plan to look at our Title II grants. And so it really is focused on the Title II, because that's what the direct money influence is around. And then also some policy. And I think that policy could come through several different venues, right? Through OJDDA and our evidence-based work. I think it could come in a variety of different ways, but really I think it's on page 8 and 9 are the kind of the key is really where can SAGs find themselves being influencers in the state around probation.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, thank you for clarifying that. I just assumed, knowing Annie Casey, that they'd want to, hey, get in there and start, testing some of these out and convince your peers to do it.
Yeah, Christina. Oh wait, I was that style of work is what we're familiar with from Casey. I will admit I haven't poured through this attachment yet, so that's also partially why at the beginning I didn't have much to offer. But yeah, I think it's an interesting question. Again, Anya, you can say what our Title II categories are, and what we have done is in the past biennium. That doesn't, we don't necessarily have to, well, Anya can tell us what we've said to the federal government, yay or nay, but we've done a nice job of trying to align some of those Title II dollars with some of our own state like in community investment dollars, so that and those, when we use those Title II dollars, we're well aware that they need to be really focused on that kind of juvenile justice population. But we found some great connectivity in them last year, and have made 8, I think, additional awards with the Title II dollars. And to then do this, to do something different in the coming biennium, totally possible. And then to think, but we want to think about, I don't know what priorities we've set, and the mechanics of this just are something I think to discuss. Anya.
So I was just, if that okay, just a couple of points. I agree with everything everybody said. Now, what makes this project different, it's geared towards state advisory group. It's not, and the idea is to consider making some provisions for probation reform in the next 3-year planning process.
Hmm.
Not affecting our current one, because the current one is set, with the exception we still have not applied for the 3rd year of the 3-year plan, fiscal year 23 funding. If there is a need to make some changes for the last year of the current 3-year plan, it's still an option. But the biggest possibility is to make some it's not even changes because we haven't developed it, but help us shape the future for the next upcoming 3-year plan, which would cover fiscal years 24 through 26. So it's planning for the future. From what I understand right now, they're not asking for like a full commitment that we will engage in a statewide reform, and by the end of the year, we'll have everything figured out. This is an opportunity to go learn, to think, and see what can be done. Yes, there's a potential to support this reform with funding. Honestly, there's not enough federal funds to cover the whole state, but if we could find a willing participant in 1 or 2 areas of Oregon, that would be probably a start. It's kind of reminds me the similarity with the crossover use projects that the state advisory group funded across the state a few years ago, when we had it happening. Well, of course, Multnomah County had it on their own, just as Multnomah County has probation reform going on right now with NEKC. But other counties were added to the mix. We had Marion and Lane and Washington and Jackson join the group. So it's something like that. And another thing, it's fully supported by the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. So they're on board with that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this NEKC is the sort of the think tank and the provider, but it's also supported by a coalition of juvenile justice. It's supported by the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, which is technically our funder. It is also by the National Council of Juvenile Family Court Judges, and that's the connection to the JDP reform that the Judicial Department is going through right now. So I think it's a great opportunity. And Christina, as far as commitment, we're not, by fitting out this application, we're not committing to, and we'll come back in Oregon, we will change everything. If we do, that will be great.
Yeah. No, and I wasn't, so that's very, very helpful, Anya. And I think the opportunity to really put an emphasis and a focus in the 3-year plan, and start shaping how policy plays out in action in counties because of the 3-year plan. I think that's a great opportunity.
Yeah, I think
There was, if somebody wanted to raise their hand and say, hey, why don't you give us some funding to actually put this into action? It would be nice if that was available, so that there were some kind of demonstration sites to go along at the same time. But I get it. I'm known for being patient and not wanting to do everything all at once. Right, Brian?
Yeah, Anya, that's really super helpful context. That a little longer runway, I think, makes me feel like does help lower the,
Yeah.
the blood pressure a little bit. And the blood pressure around the thing that Christina spoke to, right? Like needing to find those on the ground, whether they're county or community-based or a combination of partnerships. Like we know, I know from experience, we all know when we miss that part or we say, no, sorry, deadline's in 2 weeks. We kind of need, like those, doing that too quickly doesn't always work out that well. Because people then feel like rushed and they're just like, no, I'm not in this, anyway, but there's, I think it seems like some questions to be answered then are like, I mean, do we need OYA involved in this effort in some fashion? I don't know the answer to that. I'm just asking. Like, I know that community-based and that deeper, but their policy, if you will, and partnership is important. So their perspective on this, I think, could be at the hey, we're forming a work group, like we're talking, we want to have some conversations with Casey and your involvement can, so question maybe, and then I can't remember what else I was gonna say, but I think the title, the third year of planning point that Anya I think asked seems important for us to figure out now. And then the last point, and I don't want to bore this committee with it, Anya and I, we need to talk a little bit about staff capacity, just to figure out what person holds this work. I'm full transparency, right? We had a pop for an additional juvenile justice staff position that was, that is not part of the governor's recommended budget. And I will admit, yeah, I want to give this the amount of attention and staff time that it really deserves.
So I'm going to ask a question a little bit differently than I did last time. After internal review, if it seems like we have the staff capacity, how are people feeling about at least filling out the initial application? Is there any opposition to that?
I think we should explore it. We can, while they're taking their time to decide if they were to pick Oregon, we still have time to say no if we explore it more and find out, oh, we don't want to do this. It's going to be too much. There's no staff capacity, but I think we don't want to miss out on the potential opportunity.
And I think even if we aren't selected, we might be able to get some of the transfer technology with the other states that are doing it, which would be kind of fun too. So at venues such as the CJJ conferences that Anya and Brian and Lindsay and Lawrence go to, is connecting up with states that might receive it. So, okay, does that give us direction, Anya?
So if I'm hearing you correctly, I'll fill out the application and we will see whether we get admitted. And then we'll still have time to think about it some more between now and their decision and going there. And even if we decide to go and we still have an opportunity to change our minds when we come back. This is not a commitment that once you've committed to it, you cannot bail yourself out. It's not a marriage. No.
Still courting. I do think though that at our meeting for OJDDA on the 15th, I'm going to just broach this conversation just to make sure that I want to be really transparent with all 36 counties so that everyone knows and they're not hearing it from some other direction, and encourage them to read the toolkit. So just as transparency and that piece, because I know that there's been several departments across the state after the evidence-based decision making that are absolutely right in line with what this says, and so we have some counties that are moving this direction anyway. So that's really cool and exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Next on our agenda, I have to pull it back up because I'm in the toolkit. Okay. I have to look at Thank you so much, Joy. You're amazing. Can you go down just to make sure that I don't go off of? Okay. Before we get to the kind of the last three are really more around report outs, but last week we had the opportunity to receive in a different venue I'm just a member of the Central and Eastern Oregon Juvenile Justice Consortium. And during that conversation, Sonia Little Deer Evans from Deschutes County presented an opportunity. And Sonia, I could go into it, but I would not take that away from you. But what we did do is Anya and I and Lawrence, all three of us were at that meeting. And we did recommend they bring it really to the subcommittee because we have some dollars that we could put forward. And this seems like something that we have been really committed to in both the YDD, the YDC, and our Juvenile Justice Subcommittee is around meeting where they're at and really focusing and making sure that the cultural specific services and culturally responsive kind of individualized opportunities are there. And Sonia presented a program. And so Sonia, would you like to go with it?
Sonia and Molly, before you go on, we have a copy of the document that you shared at the Kojak meeting. Should we put it up on the screen?
Yes, please. There you go.
Good. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure if that had already went out to everyone or not to just look at, but yeah, it was kind of fun being at the Kojak meeting, thinking we would find a way to fund this as Kojak, and several state agencies that were there were like, hey, we got money for that. So that's always a good thing. But just in a nutshell, I mean, we are and have been working on for a while a goal for our facility to cultivate a more inclusive, welcoming environment in our facility by supporting self-determination for youth to identify race and ethnicity and providing culturally responsive services to Indigenous youth specifically. We've definitely noticed our numbers of Indigenous youth increasing over the last several years, and they are a population that tend to have longer lengths of stay in our facility and don't usually have a lot of family or folks that come and see them while they're there. And so not having really, any folks that identify as Indigenous or Native on our staff, just knowing that they're not seeing themselves represented in our facility and not getting any culturally specific services. So we started working on that. And part of that was pulling the data and finding out what the data tells us. And you can see that on this proposal document, but we essentially realized that the majority of the youth that identify as Indigenous are throughout our region, mostly in Kojak, but definitely I think only 3 out of 31 distinct youth over this 5-year time period were Deschutes County. And so that's what made us think about, hey, let's talk about how we help support this work as a region. And so, yeah, we came seeking, we've entered into a contract with Papalaxamisha, which is a local community-based organization, grassroots organization, all led and staffed by Indigenous folks who do prevention, education, and community advocacy work. Mostly in the Confederate Tribes of Warm Springs in that community, but definitely they do some work regionally as well. And so we've entered into a contract with them to provide the services, which are basically twofold. They're going to be coming in once a month and doing Indigenous craft circles for all youth that are in our facility at that time. And then we are building a mentoring, individual mentoring programming for any youth who come into our facility and identify as Indigenous or Native American and elect to engage in the program with Papalaxamisha. And so it's just $10,000 for 2 years. And we're also providing, paying for all the materials, resources, supplies that they'll need. So we came to Kojak looking for some support around that. And Anya thought she had some money in a bowl somewhere. So, and I can answer any questions.
So, Papa Laksamisha, I'm getting closer. Means what?
Unity. It's Wasco for unity.
Thank you.
Papa Laksamisha.
Papa Laksamisha. Closer. Anyway, I've been practicing on that. And so we did ask Sonia to bring the one page, the proposal to us at the Juvenile Justice Committee, because this has been something that we've been acknowledging, is that we don't have a lot of services specifically for Indigenous First Nation people that, and I think our data probably comes across not just at Deschutes County, but in other counties as well, for longer lengths of stay and less visits by families. And so any questions from any of the committee members? And then Anya, I'll have you close out, but any committee members?
Exciting.
So Anya, do you want to talk a little bit about some dollars that you're on dollars that we need to, that from I think it's 2018, we have some dollars left over that we could commit to this, is that right?
Right. Before we do, Joy, have you been able to scroll down a little bit to the data bit that Sonia was providing? Sorry about this. I don't know what you see on your screen. I don't see the whole document. So I was just wondering if there is a way to show what's missing, at least from the view.
Okay, I am gonna, so it's currently showing the budget right now, and let's see. I'm gonna reshare the screen so we can see the whole.
That would be great, because there is a section at the bottom of the page that has the data that Sonia had put together that I wanted you guys to see. But meanwhile, while Joe is doing it, I just thought it was a great project, and it's very much in line with the racial and ethnic disparities reduction efforts that we have, but also it fits with the juvenile justice improvement dollars that we. Okay, so we could dedicate about $5,000 towards this project, if that's agreeable to the committee.
And Sonia's right. Other state agencies, this would be a braiding and a blending of dollars. Other state agencies also came to the table, and Kojak, I think, is committed to picking up the final if there's any left over. I think everyone was super supportive.
Right, and I think even I shouldn't say even, and OYA was also willing to contribute.
Correct.
It's great.
Any other thoughts? So I would entertain, I don't know that, I think it will be kind of a motion or an entertain consensus committee. I don't think we have a quorum, so I'm going to have to do it on consensus, I believe. The commitment of $5,000 is, again, I'm going to ask Rafi or Sam, any thoughts or questions?
No, I mean, I think it sounds great. And if we've got the money and it's left over and we can put it towards this, that sounds like a win-win.
And Molly, I don't want to be, the money, I'm support this 100%. I don't know that based on what I've heard, I think as a YDD, we want to do this. We want to know if the committee support it, because we're committed to just general transparency about what we're doing with the federal dollars.
Okay.
I don't think somebody who's been here longer than me could correct me, Molly, or others, right, who've been in more meetings, Anya, that I technically have to like have a vote. I don't think, whether at the committee or the council level, like these dollars, y'all know that federal dollars have been awarded and gone, and there's sometimes been not very much process. We want to have a little more process and transparency, but bottom line is we want to do this. We want to let you know, we want your support in doing this, whether a vote or a thumbs up or whatever the right process is. I think we don't have to go through lots of Robert's rules.
Right. I super appreciate it. I think it really is just about transparency and the excitement that we're actually, being able to support something and that it really fits in our vision, values, and what we have committed to both as a YDC, as the YDD as a whole, right? Yeah, I think it was just brilliant. So I do know the reason for the 5,000 is that it is the number that ODE procurement makes it easy at. And so we want to do it to make it easy to get it out the door, because procurement can be kind of a bugaboo. So that's why we came up with that number.
Right. We can do it through an invoice process.
Yep. Which is
What's the cutoff, Anya? Is it 10 or 20? I thought it was 20.
So they're asking, the contract is for 2 years for $10,000. So if we could get an invoice for the first year, say for 5,000, then let's see if we could potentially dedicate 10,000. I'm just not quite sure how to make it.
well,
a
OYA
smooth
wanted to commit
moving
money
through-
to it.
Right. So let's commit 5,000 now that we know that we both have and can process, through our payment processes. But I think it's a great opportunity, and Sonia, really thank you for bringing it up to our attention. And who knows, maybe we can replicate similar things in other detention facilities as well.
Yes.
That's the nice thing about having you at COJAC meetings. Otherwise, you would have missed it.
Right. But seriously though, if there is a chance to replicate this type of programming in other detention facilities, that could be something that we might be, able to support as well.
Okay.
So Sonia, send me a bill.
Okay, perfect. I was just gonna say, we and again, just really great way to bring community-based organization to the table and share it with us as other counties. So I appreciate that, Sonia.
Thank you. And also I just wanted to follow up what Brian was saying. We don't need to vote on that, but we certainly want to keep you up to speed with what is going on and full transparency. And if anybody in the council has additional questions or concerns or is not supportive, we also need to know that as well.
Okay. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So the next agenda item we have is CJJ. Anya, do you want to kick it off, or do you want me to kick it off, or Brian, or who wants to kick it off?
Joy's been doing a ton of work.
I know Joy is
Who has control of their mouse, because I just could not unmute myself in time. Sorry.
So I have to just be honest, I haven't looked at the annual conference agenda item. Anya, are there things on the agenda that we need to talk about? Because what happens at the annual conference is that I sit in representation of all of you. And oftentimes there's some votes that need to occur. Have we seen what
I have not seen the agenda for the Council of SAGs meeting, but if once they make the agenda public and if there are some agenda items that require vote, then yes, Molly, you would be taking a vote on behalf of Oregon, but they usually let us know what's on the agenda ahead of time. Maybe March is a little early.
Yeah,
but
probably at our Juvenile Justice Committee meeting in May.
Yes.
A reason I think this is important, and we will get it out to you as soon as we do, is a couple of years ago, there was a oh good, the OYA sending some people. That's great, Rafi. That at the meeting was around the school to prison pipeline and the vote on SROs. And so that was a bit of a weird vote to take. And so I can't represent Oregon without communicating first with all of you. And so we will get the agenda and the policy pieces out ahead of time so we can have a discussion of them at that May meeting. So I know how to vote on behalf of Oregon.
Great. But meanwhile, Joy has been fantastic setting meetings with the Oregon representatives on the Capitol Hill on May 24th.
And they're all new. I've not met any of them.
Looks like we'll be meeting several of them in person.
Yes. Yeah, I know, because the act has to be reappropriated again this year.
That is correct. So the act is up for reauthorization sometime in fall this year. So basically we have two things on the agenda on behalf of the Coalition for Juvenile Justice for the act. We want the act reauthorized with the provisions that we're advising, because there are some challenges that 2018 reauthorization presented. And so part of the reason to reauthorize the act, well, of course, is the money, so that money can continue to be appropriated, but also to make some fixes to the act that were caused during the previous reauthorization, including what Lindsay was talking about today, was this court holding facilities and the interest of justice. It was supposed to be part of jail removal, but it did not. So anyway, so there are some technical issues with the current language in the law, and that's what we're talking about, but also funding. And I don't know, Brian, if you want to say anything about it, but we were asked to put together a bit of information about what type of federal funds we want to support. And that was the governor sending her priorities to our congressional delegation. And hopefully the title too will be included in the final version.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. We've submitted like a quick, Anya wrote it up, a great sort of overview, and actually went to ODE, and then the agency gets kind of its, all of its federally appropriated dollars into kind of one package to hand over to the governor's office. And at least that there's some awareness that among the millions, billions, who knows how many federal dollars are coming into the state. I'm sure there's a lot, but that's one of for the work that's discussed around this table, that's one of the things to not lose sight of. So it was great to just be able to put that out there on the table in a sort of proactive way.
Right, and then we'll use the same write-up during our visits.
Perfect. And I think, will we have a local connection to one of the presenters at CJJ? Christine.
Oh, Christina, that's Christina.
You're on mute.
What is it with me? I'm relapsing into my technology challenges. We have been involved for the last 2 years trying to make it happen, and then earlier in March 2022, we finally brought some train the trainer training here from an organization called Strategies for Youth, and they focus on providing training to law enforcement and collaborating. The whole name of the training is called Policing the Teen Brain, but it's really focused on helping police officers understand that kids aren't just little mini adults, and that it comes from, it's a multidisciplinary training team. So we have people from the juvenile department, people from Latino Network, people from Clackamas Behavioral Health who work specifically with adolescents, and then members of the law enforcement community training other members of the law enforcement community on things like brain development, how trauma manifests itself in behavior of young people, how we share racial and ethnic disparity data for Clackamas County with them, et cetera. It's kind of really to try to get them, it's a 2-day, all-day training, 2 days, which to try to get members of law enforcement to break away for 2 solid days of training is no small feat. But yeah, so we've been working on that, and I think we did our train the trainers, and we've completed 3 trainings for law enforcement. So they approached us and asked if we would be on a panel with the organization Strategies for Youth. They're out of Massachusetts. And then also the state of Utah has done some work with them. So they have their director of juvenile justice. And then Alice Perry, who is my assistant director here at Clackamas County Juvenile, is going to be one of the panelists talking about what we've done, because the juvenile department is actually taking the lead. One of my managers who reports to Alice coordinates the whole thing. So it's pretty exciting. I love one of the pieces that we do is we bring in kids from the community to sit down, and we do they do breakout groups, mixed groups, and the officers usually have their minds blown. We do report outs because things they've assumed, and hearing what young people have to say about their encounters with police. And anyway, it's been pretty powerful. It's like I said, we've only been doing this for about a year now. But anyway, so Alice will be there at the conference. She's pretty excited about going. So anyway, so at least, you know, somebody who's not in the YDC who's going from a juvenile department. So.
Cool. Thank you. It's been fun over the last couple of years that I've been able to participate. We've had several Oregon strategies highlighted back at the CJJ. The first year I went, it was actually 2 of the YDC members did presentations on the youth development and working with a project out of OSU, I think is where the project came out of. And so it's kind of fun to watch Oregon be a leader across the nation. Anything else, Anya, on CJJ?
I don't think so, unless somebody else has something to add. But looking forward to the presentation, Christina.
Yeah.
Great.
We did submit a proposal, but we weren't chosen. Wah, wah, wah.
You're the chosen one.
Well, no, Alice is the chosen one.
Alice is the chosen
Well, good.
one.
She'll have some.
Yeah.
She'll have some local fans in the audience, I presume.
Definitely.
I know. A little factoid: we are the first jurisdiction in Oregon to bring strategies for youth here. So, yeah, kind of exciting.
It was actually at the CJJ annual conference also a couple of years ago that I first heard about Casey's probation reform, and was interested in it, and found out that Multnomah County was walking the path. And so that's always been a great connection, a connector there. Anything else for CJJ? Okay, I'm going to hop on to legislative session. And I see my name's attached to this, which is totally appropriate. And I have a couple of things that I just want to highlight. I've already talked about a couple of the ones. One is around the minimum age, as well as the Juvenile Justice Advisory Commission through CJC. The other kind of part that I would like to highlight is that around reform and collateral consequences, there's also a bill in for expunction and expanding expunction, so that youth have less barriers when they turn 18 and move into the workforce or their higher education. And then the other one that I personally have been super involved with has been around the removal of the restriction on Oregon Health Plan while youth are in detention facilities or coming up on the end of their placement at a youth correctional facility. There is movement at the federal level, and I want to thank Brian and Anya for allowing us last time we're at the Hill Day to do some advocacy around that. And the federal legislation has moved to allow that starting at December of 2024. And then the other piece really at the state level that is pretty focused this time is around behavioral health and substance abuse. And so both of those topics have lots of legislation moving forward that potentially impact youth, and including some residential opportunities for supporting some residential facilities, and just an increase in funding for services. So those are all of the things that are kind of headed through legislative session right now. Where we're at is in April, early April is the first deadline. I don't want to say what date it is, for everything that's going to move forward to have a hearing. And so that will be, once that has happened, the number of bills moving forward will be significantly reduced. And that will be the time, I think, that we'll be able to really pick through what ones are going to impact the juvenile justice system and prevention and education and all of those kind of moving through. JDEP and YSEP have 2 bills that are kind of impacting them that are moving through the system. And I could go into lots of explanations, but 2 things. One is I think everybody on this call has pretty informed on all of legislation. And so I feel like I would be talking to the choir on that. And the second is, even though we've done a lot of work on a couple of the bills, realistically, until that first cutoff happens, we don't know which ones are really going to move forward. And so while minimum age, healthcare, and minimum age, healthcare, and the commission have all had public hearings, that doesn't mean that they're all going to move forward. And so I feel premature getting very excited about any of those until they have the first cutoff date. So any questions about legislative session or updates other than that? Sam?
There's Senate Bill 819 for restraint, for abbreviated day. The intent was to include JDEP, YSEP, LTCT, hospitals, and pediatric nursing, but unfortunately, the bill lists county jails, hospitals, and Oregon School for the Deaf. So I notified our people here at ODE. Don't forget, they listed the wrong statutes, or they left out important programs. The intent, I know the intent was to exclude all of our programs from the abbreviated day, but they listed the wrong statutes, but then hopefully it'll get fixed once it goes to the House. Yes.
The amendment. Okay. And I'll follow up with Laura and Betsy to make sure that we catch that for the amendment purposes.
Okay, thank you. The abbreviated day, yeah.
Okay. Yep. 819.
Yeah, thank you. And there's another one that that caught me by surprise. I thought it wasn't going to go anywhere, but there's a hearing scheduled, 3009. That is where DHS will establish a fund for residential, for psychiatric day and residential, and they're supposed to get money from OIA and ODE and so forth. So that I was caught me by surprise. They actually have a hearing next week, Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the number of that again, Sam?
3009. I have it up here. If I can share my share my screen.
You don't necessarily share it. I got the number. I can look it up. It's fine.
Yep.
So I do think probably, Anya, probably Lindsay, we probably need to have a conversation or hook Lindsay into several of them. Oh no, probably. I'm trying to think of sight and sound. The last thing, I'm just going to leave it open for this moment in time, is probably no later than the May meeting, we're gonna start having a conversation around the detention guidelines. And we're not gonna have our first kind of gathering of that, but just starting to put it on our radar screen. And the reason for that is once legislative session is over, there are going to be some changes to detention. And so we are going to need to reconvene the detention guidelines group. But I'm not going to lay that on Anya's table quite yet.
Not until the JCP plans are approved.
Correct. Not until JCP and truly the legislature needs to be done because we need to be able to incorporate what they have changed.
You know, speaking of legislature, I don't know if you've been tracking this bill. I just found it. I shouldn't say I found it. I opened the committee meeting agenda for judicial. And so there's a Senate Bill 819.
Yeah, that's the one Sam was talking about.
The one requiring human trafficked.
Oh, is 819 the one that requires the screening for juvenile departments?
Well, I'm sorry, it's the wrong number. It's a 745. It directs juvenile department to ensure that youth taken into custody receive sex trafficking screening.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah, and so we've been working with that one and got the training to be where it is at no cost of juvenile departments and that there's a requirement to maintain a list for services. Yeah, we do know that one.
Great, thank you.
Yep,
Yeah.
and we suggested that YSEP and JDEP teachers also be included in that training for that 1 hour online training. That was our suggestion.
That's
Because
great.
JDEP teachers are not listed as required people because they're not a state agency employee.
Okay. Luckily, they're not mandated to be the ones doing the report because that would be a little bit more awkward in a detention facility, but I do agree and appreciate at least being included in the training opportunity mandate. Yep. Okay. Any other legislation anyone wants to bring up? Brian, do we know when, yep, Christina, do we know when the public hearing is for YDC in the ODE budget?
The YDD budget is the Wednesday. It's this Wednesday. It was supposed to be today, and now it's Wednesday. Now, when the public hearing aspect of that, I couldn't. Because dates keep moving, but yes, I'm up for 30 minutes on Wednesday in 2 days.
So will you let us know when public testimony is available?
Yeah,
so that,
we'll figure it out.
And then I would offer that one of us from the Juvenile Justice Subcommittee would be willing to join in with you at the table if at all possible. And if not, then at least let us know so we can make sure we can get some written testimony in.
Yeah. Am I muted? No. Yeah. I think that it's going to be like a ODE party. I mean that in a good way.
Yeah, and it's 2.5 minutes is all we get for OYA, but we have 4 juvenile directors lined up to give our 2.5 minutes each. And that's okay.
Yeah, I think that the public testimony part is essential. So when I'll be there. I'm second. So it's a 90-minute committee meeting, as I understand it. Your Educator Advancement Council, I think, probably has from 8 to 9 that I should be on, assuming there aren't changes or shifts, which happen all the time. But I should be on at 9.
Okay. We'll be watching. No.
Subject to change. It's like I literally was supposed to be there this morning and found out like Friday or Thursday. Like, no, you're not Friday. You're not Monday.
The one snow day really threw everything off.
That threw things off by a couple days, no doubt.
It did. It really did just kind of throw everything askew for a snow day.
Crazy.
Okay, anything else, Christina?
No, I was just gonna ask about when the Youth Development Division was up, because we're gonna be there on Thursday afternoon testifying for OYA at their public hearing. So, yeah, so you read my mind, Molly.
Yeah,
Um,
their public is Wednesday.
No, their public hearing is Thursday at 3 o'clock. Yeah.
Right after our YDC quarterly.
they timed it really well, so I only have to go down for one really long day. That was really beautiful of them.
On
Yeah.
purpose. We were back and we were doing work in the back channels for you, Christina. We were like, oh yeah, do that when Christina and Molly are going to be in town. So we during our in-person meeting. Of course.
I'm super excited to get to meet people in person. I've known Sam for many years, and I got to meet Tabidi at the Juvenile Conference, Directors Conference, but it's the 3-year anniversary. My first meeting of the YDC was 3 years ago. It was the week right after we declared the state of emergency in Oregon. So everything was on Zoom. So I've never, obviously Anya, Brian, I know you, but I haven't met all these other people in person. So I'm really excited to meet some of my colleagues on this meeting right now, live, hopefully, on Thursday.
I'm gonna have to remember to bring my book for Tabidi to sign for me because I got his book. So. Alrighty, anything else? Okay, and Logan, as a community partner, is there anything you'd like to share with us, kind of parting words?
Not for me. I've got a couple of noisy dogs in the room also. So, but this has been really valuable for me. I appreciate it. We are YDO grant recipients, and we do work with Justice Involved Youth quite a bit. Our success coaches do. So I like being informed, and I really appreciate the opportunity to join these and just kind of sit back and listen.
Great. And as a subject matter expert, if there's something we're missing, please always feel free to raise your hand so we can hear, because that's what our committee really wants to do, is make really good informed decisions. So thank you for being here today. And with that, I'm going to close us out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.